Hi everyone, this is Mr. Cervone. Welcome to my math channel. In today's lesson, we will be learning about equations of a circle. To get started, here's the following problem. Find an equation of the circle with center at 2, 4 and radius 2. Now, in order to solve this problem or to write the equation of the circle, we first need to think about the definition of the circle. So here's the definition. So the definition of circle states that a circle is the set of all points that is equidistant from a fixed point on a plane. So the definition of circle states that a circle is a set of all points that are equidistant from a fixed point on a plane. So you just have to imagine the following. Let's say you have a point here, and that is the fixed point. So let me write that in. So now you have the set of all points. So you have infinitely many points, and all these points are equidistant from that fixed point. Okay, so let me actually put the dot a little bit more in the center. That's the fixed point. So now, for example, if you take this point, that distance is d. If you take this point, that distance is d. So all these distances, they're all the same. They're equidistant. And that is really the key word. When you think about distance, what comes to mind pertaining to coordinate geometry? Well, in this case, we think of the distance formula, right? So d is the square root of, let's say, x2 minus x1 squared, and then we have plus y2 minus y1 squared, and then we take the square root of all of that. Now we can apply the same thing here. Okay. So for example, we know that the radius is 2. So in this case, the d will be the radius. So let's call it 2, and that is equal to the square root of, and now we think about this. So x2 minus x1. Well, the center, we can call that the coordinate x1 comma y1. Okay, so that will be the center here. Now, any point here would be some point xy, or the x2, y2. So that means that any point on the circle is x, and it's y. Okay, so that's any point on the circle. And the center is actually going to be 2, and for the y value, it's going to be 4. Okay, so that is now the distance between point xy, or any point on the circle, or the set of all points from the fixed point, which is at the center at 2, 4. So if you square both sides, you end up with 4 is equal to x minus 2 squared, and then plus y minus 4 squared. Okay? Now, it turns out that this equation here is the equation of this particular circle, okay? Why can we say that that is the equation of the circle? Because it actually satisfies this particular condition, okay? You, for example, will have to find all the values for x and y for which this equation is satisfied. Can you give me an example? Well, for example, let's look at the point. Let's say you have a point here, right? And let's say that that is the point 0, 4. Okay? Let's see if that works. So let's say you have 4 is equal to, and now in parentheses, 0 minus 2 squared plus, and if you have here 4 minus 4 squared. So let's see if that point is being satisfied here. So that becomes 4, and then we have plus 0, correct? So that cancels, so it actually is true. So that's one of the points, okay? Notice that not all points on the plane will satisfy the condition. Only specific points that are defined as the set of all points of that particular circle. So let me generalize this, the equation of the circle. So the equation of the circle with center h, k, and radius r is defined as x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equal to r squared. So if we go back to our previous problem, we know that the equation was 2 equal to square root of x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared. And here's the corresponding graph of the circle. Now notice that here at the center, you can actually see it from the graph that the center has a coordinate of 2, 4, okay? Which corresponds to the given center here. How do we know the radius is 2? Because you can clearly see that here we're going over by 2 units, or we're going down by 2 units, and so on and so on. So all these points that are on the circle are basically the points that satisfy that equation given here in the answer, okay? So let's look at an example now. Find the radius and the coordinates of the center of the circle defined by the following equation, then sketch a graph of the equation. So here we have 9x squared plus 9y squared plus 36x minus 12y minus 185 is equal to 0. But wait a second, this does not even look like the equation of a circle, because the equation of a circle should look like this, right? X minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and that is equal to the radius squared. Well, there's something we can do here. We can actually get this equation and somehow change it to this format by completing the square. So that's why it is important to know how to complete the square here. So let's see what we can do first here. So the first thing we can do here is combine all the like terms here, okay? And we can actually add the 185 on the right side of the equation. So let's do one step at a time. Let's first combine the like terms here. So we know that we can factor out the 9 here. So 9, and then in parentheses, we have x squared plus, and now we have 4x here, okay? Because we know that 9 times 4 is 36. Then we have plus 9. Now we can factor out another 9 here from the y squared. And what about the 12 here? What can we do with the 12? So if you factor out the 9 from the 12, you actually end up with 4/3, but this should be negative. So we're going to write negative 4/3 y and close parentheses. So that is equal to, now we're going to add 185 on both sides of the equation, okay? So let me rewrite the 5 here. Okay, so what can we do at this point? Well, at this point, we want to now complete the square. So let me rewrite this. So here we have 9 times x squared plus 4x. So let me actually change color now. Now we have to think about, okay, so what do we want to add here? Okay, so let me use this color here. Well, what do we want to add here to complete the square? So remember that if this is the b value, then here we want to add b over 2 squared, okay? Which means that that will be actually 4. Okay, so now we can continue here. So we have plus 9 and then y squared minus, so now we're going to write 4/3 y, and again I'm going to change color. And now what are we adding here? Now again, this represents the b, and here we're writing b over 2 and then square it, okay? So let's do the math here on the side really quick. So we got negative 4/3, right? That's b. So b over 2 is going to be equal to negative 2/3. Now, what happens if you square it? So if you square both sides here, you actually end up with 4 over 9. So you want to add 4 9s over here. Okay, so let's close parentheses here. And that is equal to 185. But we must add 9 times 4 from the previous term here, because we actually added the 9 and the 4 over here. Okay, so that's going to be 36. And we must also add 9 times 4 9s, which is just 4. So that is actually now convenient. So what we can do here now is write 9, and now we're going to write that this is x plus, close parentheses, squared. However, we want to add here, what are we going to add here? That is just going to be b over 2, okay? So that's how we completed the square in the last YouTube video. If you're interested, you can go back and watch it. So that's just going to be 2 here, okay? That's going to be now plus 9 times, and we have y. Now we're going to write minus, and remember that in this case, now we're going to write again b over 2. And where does the b over 2 come from? Or how do we find the b over 2? That's just going to be negative 2/3, and then we square it. And that is equal to what? Okay, so now we got to do the math here and add that all up. 185 plus 36 plus 4. And we end up conveniently with 225 here, okay? So we're actually almost done. Now, what we can do is divide 9 on both sides here, okay? So let's divide 9, and we're actually going to end up with a nice answer. So here we have x plus 2 squared plus, and then we have y minus 2/3 squared, and that is equal to 25. So we actually just found the equation of the circle here right now, okay? So that's part of the problem, okay? Find the radius and the coordinates of the center, okay? So by finding the equation of the circle, now you can find the coordinates of the center of the circle, okay? So what we can write here is the center, let's call it C, is located. Now we gotta be careful and always take the opposite sign, because remember that the original convention is always, as you can see here, x minus and y minus, right? So that means that this is going to be at -2, the x coordinate, and the y coordinate is going to be at 2/3. So that is the center of the circle. The radius of the circle, r, is going to be, well, remember that this is here, r squared. So if you go back, that's the r squared. So we want to take the square root of 25 and only use the positive root. So here we have a radius of 5, because again, you cannot have a negative radius in this case, okay? Okay, so we found the radius, the coordinates of the center, and we found the equation. Now we want to sketch the graph of the equation, okay? So if you want to sketch the graph, now you know where the center is and what the radius is, so you kind of have an idea how big the graph should be. So first you draw the x and y coordinate. Then you want to establish the units on the x and y. For example, we can call this 1 unit and 1 unit up over here. Okay, so the next thing is we can now establish the center, okay? So the center is at -2 and 2/3. So we go over by 2 units and we go up by 2/3, right? And 2/3 is a little bit below 1, is about 0.666 repeating. So I would say it's maybe about here, right above 0.5. So you can draw here an approximate dot at that point. So that is actually the center. Okay, so how do you draw the circle now? So what I would recommend is to draw 4 points that are in the horizontal and vertical direction that are 5 units away from that center point. Now that we have the points, we can now draw the circle, okay? Ideally, you want to use your compass to do that, okay? Because if you do it freehand, the circle might not look nice. Okay, so this is the circle. So maybe it's good to actually label a few things. For example, you can label this to be C, okay? And maybe we can write the equation of the circle. And here we're gonna write x plus 2 squared plus y minus 2/3 squared is equal to 25, okay? So please make sure that you have the following elements in the graph. First, you want to have the x and y labeled, okay? Don't just write or just draw an arrow going to the right and one above. You need to also label the x and y axis. You also want to establish at least 1 unit on the x and 1 unit on the y, okay? Label the center and also label the equation of the circle itself, okay? So these are all the elements that you want to include in any graph actually, not just for the circle, okay? Now, finally, how would you double check if this is the actual graph of this equation in the calculator? Because remember, with the calculator, you can only input y in terms of x. So you cannot really do it here, right? Well, there's a way around to do it. Let me show you exactly how you can do it. First, you need to take the original equation, and then you need to solve for y in terms of x, okay? You're gonna end up with two equations, but I'll show you exactly what I mean. So let's say you take this equation and you wanna solve for y, okay? So let's first write y minus 2/3 quantity squared is equal to, and now you're gonna write 25 minus, in parentheses, x plus 2 quantity squared, okay? So we're trying to isolate y basically. Now we're gonna take a square root on both sides. So here we get y minus 2/3 is equal to, and notice when you take a square root, in this case, it's going to be plus minus. So that's going to be the square root of 25 minus, and then we have x plus 2 quantity squared. Now, why is it plus minus? Because it happens that when you draw the circle, right, the positive part is going to be the top part of the circle, and the minus is going to be the bottom part of the circle when you graph this in the calculator. And lastly, we want to add 2/3, which means that the entire graph is actually shifted upwards by 2/3 of a unit, okay? So you end up with plus minus the square root of 25 minus x plus 2 squared, and then plus 2/3, okay? So you want to actually input this in the calculator. So let me show you again how we can do this. So let's get the calculator. So first you type in y1 equals to the square root of 25 minus x plus 2 squared, okay? And then we add 2/3 at the end here, okay? Then you press enter. Now we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna add a negation here in the front. Okay, so you do it this way. Okay, so now that we're ready, we can hit graph. So first, it will graph the top part of the circle and then the bottom part of the circle. Notice that the circle doesn't look circular because of the window, okay? So what we can do here is, adjust the window. Okay, so here's the graph in the calculator, okay? And I think it looks pretty much what we did here in the sketch. You can compare it, okay? So that's basically it for today's lesson, okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, and have a wonderful day.